because Galway will rejoice like never before. Galway are the All-Ireland champions. They have now in Galway got new heroes.
Christy O'Connor, Galway versus Kilkenny, Henry Shefflin, Brian Cody, a crucial Leinster Championship match. No shortage of subplots.
Yeah, big time, Cian. But I think the other side of that subplot, though, is, is this really what the game is kind of centred on? Like, seems to be very much around the Cody Shefflin kind of narrative. I suppose really nobody really knows where Galway are at. Galway probably don't even know themselves. Very good for 65 minutes, in the context of the overall game, like against Wexford. Didn't finish it out. I'm sure Henry wasn't happy with that. Our Galway, we don't know with Kilkenny. They're always going to be really hard to beat. Like, are they at the level that the likes of Limerick are at? You'd have to say no. You'd have to say absolutely the same with Galway. So, like, if this game was happening 5 or 6 years ago, I think that this would be absolutely supernova stuff. I think now, Cian, the narrative is Henry and Cody, and it's kind of there. That's what it is. The footouts are going to look for the money shot. The TV camera is going to be all over it. But let's see what's going to happen after that. Does that make sense?
No, it completely does. And I suppose for Galway, the fact that I suppose they frittered away a point away to Wexford, considering they got into a commanding position. Then last Saturday at the stadium, they were well in control against Westmeath. And if you get 20 in the first 26 minutes, Christy, Galway had 23 shots. They scored 220.
Yeah. Well, look, they got the job done. And I think, we'll say the reality of the Leinster Championship with the 6 teams, Cian, is that, a lot of this has been the massacres. A lot of this has been defined from the Galway Carlow game in 2019 when Galway actually didn't go out. They only beat Carlow by 6 points. It didn't just come down to that. They needed a bit more on scoring difference to actually qualify. Going out and scoring difference, but that definitely, has set the ground rules for every other team now. So, like, it's not like in the past where, you get a chance to do a number on a team. You kind of, you might or you might not take. Whereas now, it's been demanded of teams that you absolutely have to go to town on the opposition, drive them into the ground. And I'm sure even after that was very much at the forefront of Galway's minds after the Wexford collapse. Well, not say collapse, but really lose or getting only a draw out of that game, in the circumstances, not good enough for Galway. So that probably focused minds a lot more. And that's why they were so clinical and so ruthless against Westmeath. But now Sunday again, this is the real test. Kilkenny coming to town, the Cody Shefflin factor, Henry going up against, friends, his own nephew, former teammates, his former manager. It's not an easy task, a lot of emotion. And, and it has been a very, very tough time for the Galway squad, even with the tragedy of, Kate Moran recently, desperate stuff. I know there's a connection there with the squad, with Henry's brother. This panel has been rocked, emotionally traumatized in lots of different ways. So there's a lot of emotion attached to this game. A lot of emotion attached to Galway's season, considering what's happened so far. So, but this is the first real gauge of, where we'll find out where they're really at.
That's hard to deal with too, Christy. I suppose and the fact that you're in such a condensed spell with matches arriving thick and fast. It's hard, I suppose, to deal with real life issues too.
Yeah, exactly. We spoke about this maybe 2 weeks ago, Cian, about, we said, there's a potential that, a big gun is going to be gone by the 24th of April. And you could say a Tipper effectively gone. They're hard to see them getting anything out of, going to the Gaelic grounds. And even we spoke about it last week where a lot of the younger players going into the Clare match, knowing that their season's effectively on the line. And that's a whole different level of pressure, which you could see probably got to the Tip lads a little bit. There's a lot of other issues going on as well. But to answer your other question, these are amateur players. They're You know, they're not like they're not in a professional setup. You know, they have to go home after training. They have to, you know, deal with this stuff themselves. Like even for Henry, like it's, you know, incredibly sad to lose his brother at such a young age. But you know, it just shows you the level of mental strength and resolve and just an absolute winning mentality that he has still been able to, you know, get on that road, guts of like what 400 kilometer round trip on bad roads across the country, probably 3 times a week minimum, and go up and show the Galway players, you know, his level of commitment and his commitment to that cause. You know, it says an awful lot about him, but it just probably underlines as well, Cian, why he was the player he was. You know, like that's what winners do. They find a way. They leave no stone unturned, and you know, it must be incredibly difficult for him. I suppose he's probably lucky in a way, in lots of ways, that he has Richie O'Neill as his coach, great friend of his. Richie, I'd say, does a lot of the driving. He has that support network, which does make a big difference when you have that. You know, when you're dealing with that level of grief, and I suppose maybe being able to talk to Richie on the roads. But you know, yeah, as you said, Cian, this is bang, bang, bang stuff. Like there's no time to you lose a game, something goes wrong, you just have to wipe the slate and move on, because you know, you've seen that with Wexford last week. You know, they've their 2 home games. They got 1 point out of their 2 home games. You know, they have a lot to do to get out of this Leinster Championship, or to get into the top 3.
Christy, I was going to say, like, if you look at the fact that like, you know, Kilkenny last weekend put a big rout on the Laois side that really put it up to Dublin the week before, then Dublin go down to Wexford Park and win. Like, is there much we can read into that, or is that just one of the quirks of the championship?
Yeah, look, I suppose the first day, Colm, you know, your first day out, like I thought now that in Leinster in particular, there was definitely a kind of almost a league type feeling to some of the hurling, and you know, maybe the weather contributed to that. Like, you know, the Laois Dublin game, Laois have a lot of history with Dublin. They beat them in 2019. You know, they wouldn't have the same maybe hang-ups with Dublin that, you know, maybe other teams would have. So yeah, like there's all of that going on. You just don't know. Look, we all wondered where Limerick were at going into the championship. Look at what they've done. Look at how they've performed. You know, we were writing Waterford up too much. Maybe we were overhyping them a bit. Like, you know, and even if you look at the Waterford Tip game the first day, you know, and then you look at Tip's performance the second day against Clare, you know, maybe you could delve a little bit deeper into that and say, well, our Tip maybe, or our Waterford as good as maybe people think they are, you know, considering that they struggle to beat, you know, they struggle to put Tip away, really. And then Waterford played well the last day, but if you look at the last, you know, maybe 20 minutes of that game, like they got maybe 23 minutes, they got the 2 goals, obviously, which, you know, massive turning points in the game. They got 1 point. So, like, you know, are we reading too much into that as well? Like, let's be honest about it. Limerick were down 4 All-Stars. Peter Casey, Kyle Hayes, Cian Lynch, Seamus Flanagan. They still scored 30 points. You know, so as you said, like, it's so much going on, Colm, and you know, Limerick are just seem to be operating at a different level, and everyone's just trying to get up to that level. And as of what we've seen so far, have struggled to match that. You know, even the Clare Limerick game, or the Clare Tip game, like, you know, we say some of the stuff, some of even the defending of Tip, like I'd say Limerick are just looking at it and they're saying, you know, the way they set up, the way they structure their team, just on a different planet to what Limerick are doing, you know.
Yeah.
For Galway, Christy, I suppose there's an acceptance, a general acceptance, while obviously in the championship, Galway people want to win, but the fact that Henry Shefflin was coming in and the high profile retirements that Galway are being forced to deal with just through time, that there was always going to be an element of uncertainty about Galway in this particular championship, Christy.
Absolutely, Cian, and like there's a lot of mileage on a lot of the, you know, the players who've been there, you know, a good while now, right? But I do think there's a couple of things that's sticking out, right? Like the main players are definitely playing better now, right? Perform pretty more consistently than they were over the last 2 years. like you could say Henry's resurrected the careers of Jack Grealish and Thomas Monaghan, who were kind of almost, they weren't a factor the last few years. He's brought in some of the younger lads, like Gavin Lee came on the last, they got 2 points. So I suppose he's trying to blend all that together, maybe trying to introduce a bit more steel into, Galway's play, which is a natural, byproduct of when you bring in, two Kilkenny, a Kilkenny coach and Kilkenny manager. They're going to see if that's going to add a bit more, just a bit more hardness to Galway. That's just the way Kilkenny operate. They want to just, maybe there's a bit more old school element to it, where, a lot of Kilkenny's philosophy over the last few years, and it's not to simplify it or to water it down, like, but it's very much a case of, like, you get yourself right, you get your head right, you go out and you win your own battle, you win your own ball, and then everything kind of flows from that. And I've definitely seen a bit of that in Galway. So, but we don't know, Cian, like, how all of that is really going to work until, Sunday. And that's no disrespect to Wexford. I think the first game, both teams are going in. Galway didn't have a great league campaign, tried a lot of players, still should have won the game. Now they're up and running now. They're going into their third game of the championship. They're at home, first big home game. The whole Henry Cody narrative. So now this is real kind of gala stuff. So let's see now what they're gonna produce. And, like, people would put Kilkenny top of the pile in Leinster. We don't really know where Kilkenny are at either. So it's a really good gauge for both teams, and to see where both teams are at in terms of their championship credentials.
Kilkenny and Galway, similarities exist, Christy, in many respects, in the sense that in the last couple of years, Brian Cody has began to integrate younger players through, similar to what Henry Shefflin is being forced to do at the moment. Obviously, you're going to still have your TJ Reeds and your Walter Walshes involved, but you have, like, maybe Porrick Walsh now playing up in the forward. So, like Galway, they're probably experimenting too.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose two of the standout players, you could say, even Mikey Butler, the cornerback, was nearly one of the best players in the league, one of the best defenders, especially definitely one of the best new players. Like David Blanchfield had a couple of brilliant games, was excellent against Dublin, got man of the match against Waterford. These are, like, solid players that you would have heard of, like, but there's this classic Cody scenario where he just if he sees something in a player, he'll show his trust in him, put him into the league, put him straight in, see how he gets on. Now, some of those players struggled with Cork's pace. Some of the new guys struggled with Cork's pace in the league semi-final. But look at there's an awful lot of experience still in that Kilkenny team, Cian. Like, you mentioned the names there, like all of those guys. Porrick Walsh is an incredible player. Like Walter Walsh, if you go back to the Dublin game in the league, like, he was non-existent for 25 minutes, and then he absolutely took over the game. Ended up with 1-3. With Porrick Walsh that day, he got 5 points in play. He got 5 points in play against Waterford. Like Adrian Mullen is another guy who has come back from a cruise ship in 2020. Came back last year. Maybe came back in the league last year. Probably didn't. I'd say was still feeling the ill effects of that injury. He said in an interview in December, I think he said, I feel there's an awful lot more in me. So he's the type of guy now that, came onto the scene in 2019, Young Player of the Year, brilliant player, had a brilliant season. He was sick for the All-Ireland final, was taken off early. 2020 was a write-off. 2021, he's coming back in. So, like, a guy like him now, you could see really go on now and go to another level, and maybe help Kilkenny take Kilkenny to that next level. So yeah, like, look at with Kilkenny, what you're going to get from, right? No matter whether they're, full of all-stars, full of guys that you don't know about. Like, the Cody Creed is just so embedded in the psyche and the DNA of that team now. Like, you saw it last year's All-Ireland final. Like, they, in normal time, like, Cork should have put them away, and they just couldn't. Kilkenny, Mullen got the goal to take it extra time. Okay, Cork pulled away in extra time, like, but They're hard to beat, Keane, no matter what way they're going, what way they look. They're not going to beat them easily. And like with Kilkenny as well, like the Henry factor, you know, they obviously love the man, you know, for what he's done for Kilkenny. But make no mistake about it, like there are probably a lot of people in Kilkenny not happy that he's in Galway, that he was maybe let go to Galway, that he felt he had to go to Galway, that he maybe didn't feel that, you know, if he has a desire to manage Kilkenny, then he feels that door is closed for now. And as I said earlier, guys like Henry, winners, guys who win 10 All-Ireland medals, they don't hang around like. But they want something, a chance comes up, they absolutely go after it. But make no mistake about it, Kilkenny will be doing everything to win this game on Sunday, especially with Henry on the other side of the fence.
It's a critical contest, Christy, in the sense that Kilkenny have to play Galway, Dublin and Wexford in the remaining 3 games. Galway, of course, if they lose against Kilkenny, will be under severe pressure, considering Wexford would still have a significant chance of progress too.
Yeah, but like Galway have to go to Parnell Park, Keane, right?
No,
so,
they have them in the it's in the stadium, Christy.
Okay, sorry, apologies. So yeah, like you know, everyone was going on last year about when Dublin beat Galway and beat them well now in the Leinster semi-final. Everyone was talking about, you know, what a huge shock it was, and I was kind of thinking, how is it a shock when, you know, Galway or Dublin beat Galway in, you know, 2019. When they played them in 2018 down in Pearse Stadium, the game was a kind of a dead rubber, really, because Galway were qualified, Dublin were already gone. So that game was still very competitive. You know, they've Dublin, like, there probably is a little bit of, I'd say, bad blood still there between Dublin and Galway after the big brawl in Boston a few years back. And I'd say there's probably still a bit of a fallout from that, right? So there's never going to be anything in that game, right? So yeah, like if Galway lose on Sunday, like they're a little bit behind the gun a bit and have a lot to do and would put themselves under more pressure than they'd like to be. And now the other side of that is Wexford have to go to Kilkenny, to Nolan Park in their last game. Like you'd assume Wexford are going to pick up, 4 points in their next 2 games, but Nolan Park isn't really the place you want to be going to if you're looking for points, and even you're looking for some kind of result, even from a scoring difference perspective. Now Kilkenny might be qualified, but it doesn't matter. Even if Kilkenny are absolutely qualified, top of the group, Cody he might change up the team. He might decide to throw in a few lads. It won't make any difference. Those guys will still go out, and you know they'll do whatever it takes to win for Kilkenny. But like, yeah, if Galway lose on Sunday, they're just going to be in a situation, Keane, they prefer not to be in.
Looking at the Munster Championship, Christy, I know you were at Semple Stadium on Sunday. Impressive from Clare, but bitterly disappointing performance from Tipperary.
Yeah, big time, Keane. Like, and it's you know, like you'd wonder, like with Tip, like even say we structurally look at how they set up. Like, and if you go back to when Tip won the All-Ireland in 2019, like Ronan Maher, full-back, was a brilliant player, excellent season. You know, I just don't know why they're not going back to Ronan Maher, full-back now, right? Would say they just, if you look at how the most disappointing aspect, I would, if I was a Tip player, like I thought they were outnumbered by Clare supporters, you know, which is hard to believe in Thurles. Now, I don't know the numbers, Keane, but for me, I thought there was nearly as many Clare supporters down there as there was Tip supporters. So maybe, I don't know, it's a lack of faith in the team. You know, obviously they've lost some massive names, like, you know, like Paddy Maher in particular. I'd say psychologically just was such a blow, you know, given that he's not just retired from Tip, he's retired from Thurles Stars as well. That was obviously lost Brendan Maher, you know, Bubbles isn't around. Like, they've lost huge names, like Seamus Callan is injured. You know, like it's like anything. It's like the Dublin footballers. You know, you could say what you want about, okay, maybe the Tip should have integrated more of their younger players into the squad over the last few years. That they should have prepared for this day maybe sooner. That maybe Liam Sheedy should have expedited the the transition quicker. But in Sheedy's defence, like if you look at the league numbers last year, like a lot of guys in the first 3 league games last year, Tip used 25 players. A lot of guys got chances, and Sheedy's saying he's looking at the numbers, he's looking at what he's seen in training. He has to play, what he has to go by what guys are doing in training. So, and then that maybe slows down the level of transition that Tip maybe needed to happen quicker. So there's all of that going in. You have a new manager as well. Okay, Tommy Dunn is still there from the last management. But yeah, like it's like for Tip to win, we say 2 All-Irelands in under 21 and 18, under 20 and 19. You're seeing some of those players come through now. Probably not enough, but that's just probably where Tip have found themselves over, maybe Sheedy showing so much faith in that team. And you can't knock, Sheedy won in Ireland with those guys in 19. He no other option but to stick with them at 20, given the condensed nature of the championship. 2021, maybe tried guys. The older fellas were playing better, but this was always the risk for Tip. And the other side of it then is, the Liam Cahill factor, where, and there's no disrespect to Colm Gannon, but if Cahill, I suppose, had gone to Tip last year, I think you'd see a different type of Tip team. But Cahill had invested 2 years at Waterford. He maybe felt that he wasn't showing the same level of respect from Tip officials in the past when he previously applied for the job. He's stuck. Maybe he feels that he's a much better chance to win something with Waterford. So there's all of this, going on in the background. But like for Tip, right? They're all it's like Galway. There's always going to be loads of players in Tip. There's always going to be loads of hurlers. Like a county like Tip are never going to be down long, right? And I'm writing them off now. There's still 2 games left in the championship. But it's just very hard to see them go to the Gaelic grounds and to get anything out of that game. So like if they don't, their championship is over. And this is another part of the debate, Cian, that we've touched on here in the last 2 weeks in the podcast, is like it's not just going to be Tip. For example, the Tip championship isn't starting until the middle of August. So like, what are these players going to do? Like, there's going to be players gone out of other counties. Like, what are they going to do for like 3 or 4 months? Like, if you're a young player now and you're in college, or like, why wouldn't you go to America? Like, what would you be hanging around for? Like, you've no hurling effectively May, half of May, June, July. Like, this is the other thing we can maybe get into in more detail again. Like, but this is, everything I feared about the split season, it's kind of really happening now, that, you're going to have this block of time now, right, after your inter-county team are out, and you're going to have this in football as well, before your club championship start. Like, nobody ever thought for a second that, if Tip were gone out of the championship by, let's say, the middle of May, that the Tip championship was going to start in an ideal world on the 1st of June. That was never, ever going to happen. So, like, they've, their championship was slated to start on, mid-August. So and then the Tip senior team don't get together again until December 2022 to prepare for a 2023 championship. So, like,
it could have a massive long-term effect on any even on the inter-county team, Christy, that they're not going to play for 6-7 months. Fellas, like, you're not carrying any form from club championships. Like, some clubs could be out of the championship in mid-September.
But Cian, that was led on perfectly to my next point. Like, that this has longer-term effects as well. And if you look at even the football, right? Classic example, when Dublin were going so well, right? And even the top teams like Mayo, Kerry, right? So they're, like, in the past, they're going until September, for example. So, like, let's say you're in Armagh, you're in Division 1, go back over the years, you're a team that are maybe outside, they're top 8 team now, well, on league form, right? But a team that's maybe trying to break into that top 12, and maybe they get into Division 1, but they're gone out of the championship by, let's say, early July. So that's then Dublin have July, they've August, they've half of September. That's like 10 weeks of, condensed training time, a lot of, time spent together, collective training, hard matches, right? So, like, Dublin go back then the following year in the league, a team that's trying to that's come into the Division 1 now, they go back training maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks earlier than Dublin. They try and make up that, that time. And they might make up those grounds early in the league. But like, how can you make up 10 weeks of championship preparation on Dublin? You just can't do it. So, and this is stuff now is adding to those concerns, Cian. Like, tip now, they're effectively gone. Like, their last game against Cork could be effectively be a dead rubber. So, like, you could say that they're gone on early May. So then they don't play then, you say May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. That's 9 months before they play again. Like, what's that going to do for the long-term development of those younger players? It just doesn't. Now, I completely see the benefit of the split season. And of course, I was a club player for long enough. I was frustrated for long enough, when you're held ransom by the county team. But I still think that there's an awful lot to do to get this right. As in, even if you push it back, like I can see the All-Ireland finals going back to August. Especially with the way they're trying to get every county now to have your 16, if you're senior championships down to 16 team, right? So like that gives you way more opportunity, way more scope to get your championship played in a more condensed time. It allows you to get your provincial and your All-Ireland championship run off that bit quicker. But the other side of it then is like, if you are with a successful county, you are with a successful club, you're playing Fitzgibbon, they're talking maybe about running the Fitzgibbon or the Sigerson, maybe talking about maybe bringing it back to January. Like, where's your off time there? Like, so like there's two strands here. You have, one you could be in one category where you have no break. And then you could be in another category where you're effectively doing nothing for 6 months. Like if you're with a club that has a bad or a poor championship, you're gone. Like you're effectively doing nothing for 6 months.
And even then, a lot, you said, bring Fitzgibbon back, or the Glasgow Young, they'll be playing a lot of their hurling front loaded up in the first few months of the season, like, and not in the best time of the year. And that's another thing for them.
Well, you look at Colm, all you have to do is look at the numbers, and we won't go on, we won't, rehash them here. Like, but you look at the volume of games that, let's say, Fitzgibbon hurler has played between January and
March.
Let's say, yeah, and how many players how many games is that player going to play between March and August?
Yeah, not
maybe 4.
Yeah,
maybe 4.
And so, even I was going to say that it's not, this isn't her, but if I suppose from being a Mayo person looking here, we footballers knocked out the Connacht Championship last weekend. 6 weeks they play again, like, and then there's no club football to play in the middle because the club football has been put off till championship's over. Like, it's just mad stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I was just looking at a quote from Niall Carew, the Carlow manager, after they were well beaten by Louth last week, and he was asked, well, will many of the players stay around? And he said, well, I'll find out on Friday night, basically when they train again. Like, and that's just the reality for Niall and for a lot of, like, it's the same issue with the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah.
When is the Tailteann Cup going to start?
Yeah. And
so, like,
what format it was
and they talk about promoting the Tailteann Cup right now. I know they're hamstrung by fixtures and by you need to kind of tin out the championship a little bit before you see what how the fixtures are going to line up. But like, if you're in the Tailteann Cup, for example, you're a Carlow player, you've got a whipping from Louth, right? You're kind of wondering, well, where's our season going? Well, I have to wait now 6 weeks or whatever. I don't know what they have to wait to play, or else I can head off. I can go traveling, like, and I can be back for the club championship if I go now, I can be gone for 3 months and I can be back for the club championship in the end of July, early August. So like, it's kind of guys' minds are nearly made up, Colin, for them.
And especially, I suppose, the young lads who 2 years, they haven't been able to go anywhere. Now they can go, well, I have this big window to go and take, and what, you wouldn't blame them either, like.
100%. Like, with what a lot of the young lads and girls have gone through over the last 2 years, I would have absolutely no issue with anyone going traveling. You have to live your life. It's an amateur game at the end of the day.
Insightful as ever. Great to talk hurling, great to talk championship formats, everything. It was a really good chat, and we really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us.
Delighted as always, lads. Great stuff. Cheers.
because Galway will rejoice like never before. Galway are the All-Ireland champions. They have now in Galway got new heroes.